Good morning, Australia, on this fine invasion day, remembering that sovereignty was never ceded. And today we take a look, as is our weekly wont, at what lies in the Sunday Telegraph, Australia's #1 selling newspaper. Right, so on the front strap, happy news. New South Wales joins global coronavirus outbreak, virus alert, 4 cases confirmed. Principals on watch. We have a child in a face mask. Remembering the face masks are not to protect you from the disease. The face masks are to protect the rest of the world from the wearer of the mask. Okay, and we have a story of a child and a fiery. Fireys are our heroes. And I want to fight fires like my dad. And then there's a rare model that's a rare medal is going to be struck. To those who risked their lives in the bushfires, the National Emergency Medal will be open to those who died. Posthumous medals, great. Including the 3 US aerial firefighters who tragically died when their plane crashed this week. Okay, and Woolworths Group has run a front page ad as a gesture of thanks to our emergency services. They're offering a 10% discount for emergency services personnel and volunteer firefighters until 31 January. Offer valid in-store only. Terms and conditions apply. See woolworths.com.au/community or in-store for details. The Woolworths Group stand support through Australian natural disasters. Stand Woolworths. And then we've got another full page of Woolworths solidarity with firefighters. Okay, first news item, shorts not an option for girls at school. Girls are not being offered shorts as part of their public school uniforms, despite the state government promising to give girls the option to ditch dresses more than 18 months ago. The Education Department will not enforce its policy which states girls must have the option to wear shorts and pants, but will instead leave it to principals and parents groups to devise their own uniform changes with uniform suppliers. This is astonishing. This can't be this hard, can it? Here's some weird language. The Navy cargo shorts are the boys' shorts. Both boys and girls can wear them. We are happy with the cargo shorts as it can be used between girls and boys and siblings within families. I hope they can figure it out. It shouldn't be that hard to have a unisex dress code in 2020, can it? Right, we have the story of Jax Johnston, who, quick thinking averts a tragedy. I saved my little brother's life. Jax Johnston is too young to fully understand it, but the 3-year-old is only here thanks to the quick actions of big brother Kobe. The 12-year-old spotted his younger brother had stopped breathing and then rang the ambulance and explained the situation as their mother desperately applied CPR. Okay, good work. Wow. Okay, so headline, priceless relics of 3 French saints lost on flights. Now, for those who aren't Catholics, when they refer to relics of saints, they're talking about their bones, which get stored in little boxes called reliquaries. A holy row has broken out after an airline lost the priceless relics of 3 Catholic saints. Catholic leaders waiting at Sydney Airport on January 22 were gobsmacked when Singapore Airlines staff informed them the relics of St. Teresa of Lisieux and her parents, Saints Louis and Zélie Martin, had been lost in transit. St. Teresa of Lisieux's forearm was contained in one box, known as a reliquary. There we go. And the forearms of her parents were together in another. In a major operation that was 2 years in the making, the reliquaries were part of a 4-month pilgrimage around the country. Singapore Airlines claimed they initially had no idea of the cargo's significance because it was marked general cargo, cheaper than the priority cargo category. There are good reasons why you wouldn't want to mark this stuff up too prominently, aren't there? Each reliquary weighs about 100 kilograms and comprises an ornate box about 1 metre long, 60 centimetres wide and 40 centimetres deep. Sounds like they have been found, they just weren't there at the moment they were expected to be there. It's a little unclear in the story there. Climate probe splits libs. Parties left and right choose their own interpretation of new attitudes driven by fires. Secret Liberal Party research confirming a rise in awareness about climate change has fueled bitter divisions within the party over how to tackle the issue. The focus group research was conducted nationally in November as the bushfire emergency began to take hold. I think some views might have changed since November. Left-wing Liberals, I believe they call themselves moderates or wets, have seized on the research as a means to force a policy shift on carbon emissions, but Conservatives are interpreting the results as voters simply responding to increased coverage of climate change in the media. It's an interesting hair split. Right, rugby league player Tom Burgess has become an Australian citizen and is waving the flag. Australian of the Year top gongs were won by Dr. James Mukey, who's got some good ideas about sugar and diabetes, and Ash Barty. It's a distinctly Australian thing to pick a favourite, isn't it? You don't have American of the Year or British of the Year. I don't think they do French person of the year. Right now, the outbreak of the coronavirus is page 6 and 7. Our fears unmasked. There is so much we do not know. Just the facts. I mean, this does look quite serious in the unprecedented lockdown in the Chinese city of Wuhan, which is a city of around 10 million people. Looks like they are treating it quite seriously, and there's looks like there's some severe underreporting going on. On the other hand, flu kills millions of people every year, and these terror viruses might get an official death toll of a couple of hundred. So I'm glad health officials are taking these things seriously, but put it in the perspective of how many people die from flu every single year. Right, we have a very attractive woman in lots of photos. A miracle she is alive. Aussie run over in New York subway. An up-and-coming young Australian artist has miraculously survived a freak accident on the New York subway after she tripped and fell onto the tracks and was run over by a locomotive and all 7 of its carriages. My God. Visaya Hoffey, 23 of Brisbane, sustained critical injuries and had both lower legs amputated, but her mother revealed she was only alive because a second train driver spotted her hot pink top as she lay injured on the subway tracks. Unbelievably unlucky to fall in that situation. Unbelievably lucky to be alive. Yeah, wow. Now, page 10 and 11, we get to fires, and of course, we're always very good at handing out medals in this country to the survivors and the families of the fallen. Right, so there's a picture of the wreckage of the downed water tanker. So that's a C-130, which is, you might know it as the Hercules, big 4-engine plane. Aerial firefighting, historically, in North America is a very dangerous business. Lots and lots of people die doing it all the time, partly because they don't convert the best planes to be aerial tankers. Right, page 12 and 13, more on fires. Okay, page 15, we are redefining a generation. Old way of living goes up in smoke. So page 17, we learn of the packet racket, international students smuggled cigarettes scam. International students are running lucrative, well, they're not all doing it, are they? Are running lucrative illicit tobacco rackets in Australia that offer home delivery and the sale of smuggled cigarettes on campus. Law enforcement says the activity is part of a thriving tobacco and cigarette packet black market that robs Australia of almost $700 million in taxes a year. You jack prices up enough and alternative markets flourish. Right, we've got a story here from Jennifer Dudley Nicholson. Cutting back on social media will give you less stress, more focus, and an extra 90 minutes of leisure time a day, a series of studies have shown. There's a groundswell of Australians who are setting online restrictions for themselves in 2020 or planning social media vacations to reclaim their time. Right, Felicity Urquhart has won 5 golden guitars at the Tamworth Music Festival after her year of tragedy. That's nice. Right, we've got 2 pages of ads, one for Harvey Norman, all in green and gold, and I think the other one is also Harvey Norman, in green and gold, although it's headlined Mates Rates. Yeah, you're getting Jerry's Mates Rates, folks. Guaranteed. And also in green and gold, so 3 consecutive pages of whole ads. The Northern Territory holiday here this year. So there's a national holiday here this year thing going on, which is getting a little ugly as bits of Australia compete with each other for the domestic tourism market. So we've got the sad story of Dr. Alan Cooper's fight with cancer. It's a Sue Dunleavy health special. Ava Benny Morrison tells of a mother killed in her car. Her mother has been killed in front of her husband and children after debris from a truck crashed through the windscreen of their car. Oh, wow. And some fear of foreigners. A Chinese man allegedly groped 3 teenage girls in the water at Bondi Beach. Police claim the 45-year-old man followed two girls aged 17 and a young woman of 18 into the ocean at the popular beach on Friday afternoon. It is alleged he touched them sexually before following them around in the water. Officers arrested him at the scene, and he was later charged with 3 counts of sexually touching another person without consent. Well, good work, police. Right, The Source, which is our political gossip with Annika, Linda and Miranda. Awkward encounters. There might be some frosty hallway encounters in Macquarie Street when the Premier's new chief spinner, Sean Berry, begins in the role next month. The now former 7 News state political reporter has spent the past few years lobbing 6 p.m. news bombs at various ministers, upsetting some along the way. Among them is stood-aside Sports Minister John Sidoti, who last year sent a heavily worded legal letter citing coverage of his property holdings and threatening to sue for defamation. No case has been forthcoming, while Mr. Sidoti awaits the outcome of a preliminary ICAP investigation. Suing one of his leader's staff just might be a first, and also make for some uncomfortable chit-chat in the lifts of Parliament House. New line. Orcs! Exclaim. Ugh, it's not really news, is it? So apparently left-wing young liberals are trying to reclaim the young liberals. Good luck with that. The senior right-wing liberal sources say they've got no hope. It's funny, this is a fight in the young liberals, but there's a lot of old men involved. Oh, here we go. Since Transport Minister Andrew Constant declared he would be stepping aside from Cabinet to focus on the bushfire emergency in his bigger electorate, the thank you letters have been rolling in. I wonder who let our intrepid trio of columnists know about the thank you letters coming in. Do you think it was Andrew? I think it was Andrew's staff. I think it might have been. Right, so apparently QT hotel employees are going to be dressed in high fashion. I'm not sure that will make it a more welcoming experience for visitors, but I guess they certainly look good. Right, apparently the federal government's new loan deposit scheme is getting Sydney-siders in their 30s, 40s and even 50s rushing to finally own a home in Sydney. So we're rolling the real estate Ponzi scheme up another flight of stairs. When it comes to an end, it will be unbelievably awful for this country. So we have a page from the Aidan Devine, the real estate editor, on tiny homes, which is a nice way of describing living in trailer parks. So apparently in the northern New South Wales town of Kyogle, miniature pigs are being bred and sold as therapy pets. There's a whinge from Ben Pike, the urban affairs reporter, on secret report reveals how development approval times have blown out to be the worst in Australia. I wonder if that was property developers briefed him on that. A safer baby sleeping trial has been rejected in New South Wales. So apparently there's a little plastic box you can put your baby in and then it's safe to sleep in the same bed as the parents. But New South Wales has no truck with such advances. Okay, a sex predator who wanted to go on a 44-day bucket list tour of the world has had his travels plans quashed by a court. Victoria Police refused to let the registered sex offender leave the country amid fears he would prey on vulnerable children overseas. Apparently he was planning to go on this holiday with his wife, who must be somewhat embarrassed by this. At least for her sake he hasn't been named, although... Anyway, the man will remain on the sex offenders register until 2027 and faces 5 years in jail if he leaves Australia. Well, that sounds like the system's working. Apparently good sleep routines are essential for children. The snitch tells us that prison justice is served. Right, so a prison governor has won a case where they were charged with assaulting an inmate. This has been claimed as a impressive win. So apparently the Sydney City fraud squad has been disbanded. There is a New South Wales Police Financial Crime Squad that covers the whole state. And they're rehashing the weird, sad tale of Milton Orkopoulos, who was a New South Wales Labor... He's an ex-minister, I believe. Certainly ex-MP. Was convicted of child sex offence charges. Has been released. And then said hello on the phone to a child who I think is his granddaughter. Certainly a relative, and is now in breach of his parole. Australia Day 2020, Australia Unites. This is page 36 and 37. Apparently the honours list is incredible and diverse, writes David Mills, Charles Miranda, Holly Burns and Kathy McCabe, which is a way of saying it took 4 journalists to write up the list of winners of AOs. Right, another 2 pages on Australia Day. Scott Morrison gets a column. As Australians, we belong to an ancient land with a story that spans 60,000 years. From the oldest continuing culture in the world to our most modern chapter, all drawn on the sweat, struggle and courage of millions of ordinary citizens. I think that's enough of Scott Morrison in this. Okay, we've got a new Aussie bucket list. Make 2020 the year to hop to a holiday at home. Body and Soul has things to help your children stay shiny and happy little people. Puzzle lift out for the kids, which is also flogging kidsnews.com.au. Thousands of stories on hundreds of topics. Activities by teachers for teachers. Money page for financial literacy. Link to the national curriculum. Search by topic, reading level or keyword. Okay, another 2 pages on Australia Day. Stan Grant is saying we need a better national anthem, which is hard to disagree with. It's a real letdown for the country when New Zealand has God Defend New Zealand, which admittedly the name's a bit funny, but certainly it's a good song. We're sort of like, girt by sea, boundless plains to share, we don't share. Right, Linda Burney, who's the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Affairs, Indigenous Australians, says it is a time to both debate and celebrate. So they've given her a column. That's good. We've got a top 10 things to do in Sydney on Australia Day. Brings us to World News, which is covering the outbreak, noting that China now has 50 million people locked down in various cities around Wuhan. It's spreading across the globe. France, Japan, Malaysia, Nepal, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, United States, Vietnam. I did think it was a bit odd that China was locking down Wuhan while Australia was still taking 3 flights a week. But I realise these things are hard. Authorities have pleaded with the American public not to panic over the outbreak. Got a ground zero for global viruses, noting the many interesting forms of meat like pangolin and bat that the Chinese do like to eat. I remember well being in a Wuhan food market, which looked more like a zoo than many zoos I've been to. Lots of interesting species on display for consumption. Slightly intrigued that it was a seafood market was the ground zero, considering how deep inland Wuhan is, and I'm not sure I'd want to eat anything out of the Yangtze River. All right, we have 2 pages with the headline, Charles isn't wild about Harry. So Prince Charles will drastically reduce the money he's giving to Harry and Meghan from the Bank of Dad when their commercial careers kick off, royal watchers say. Apparently the Prince of Wales was likely to cut them off if they signed deals with Netflix. I don't know why Netflix should be any worse than any other TV. All right, Trump is rallying his evangelical troops. And there's been a ruinous earthquake in Istanbul. So there we go, there's some news. I've learned something. Killing at least 14 people, causing buildings to collapse and sending panicked residents rushing into the street. Okay, Peter Credlin is telling us there is so much to celebrate. Have you noticed that missing this year has been the otherwise standard debate about whether there's anything worth celebrating on Australia Day and changing any celebrations to a less offensive date? Perhaps the usual suspects on the left have been too busy arguing that climate change has caused the bushfire disaster. I think we can walk and chew gum. Or perhaps the rallying of tens of thousands of volunteers to protect fire-threatened communities has temporarily stilled our national angst. I don't think so. I just don't think Peter's reading any room but her own. Right, she's offering a thumbs up to every volunteer, uniformed or behind the scenes. You represent the best of this country and today is your day. Thumbs down to the well-paid Red Cross bureaucracy that must ensure that every cent donated to help reaches them now. Stop the PR spin too. You do your brand a disservice and your hundreds of selfless volunteers. Thanks, Peter. All right, Peter Gleeson's no longer consigned to sharing a page with Peter Credlin. So this is a man, Peter, P-E-T-E-R, not to be confused with P-E-T-A, Credlin. Women's Libber is for men. This is referring to Bettina Arndt getting her gong in the Australia Day honours, now that she's turned into a raging right-wing men's rights advocate. Right, Gary Jubelin, the colourful former police detective, tells us is opining on open justice, particularly as it relates to himself. Right, Piers Ackerman tells us about his 6 decades of fighting bushfires. He says, I live adjacent to one of what are ridiculously called national parks, and I am also a member of the New South Wales Rural Fire Service. Right, apparently John Hewson and Malcolm Turnbull have worthless thoughts as opposed to Piers and Tony Abbott. He's noting that there was a succession of lightning strikes, so he stopped blaming arsonists. Okay, good one, Piers. I'm glad there's something that in your life isn't totally horrible. Right, Lucy Khan is carrying on about a short tweet by Julia Gillard that was, I thought, a little pointed, actually. Anyway, she was offering condolences to Scott Morrison on the death of his father. If you might recall, there was quite some unpleasantness to Julia Gillard when her father died, led by Alan Jones. Right, the Sunday Telegraph editorial's going on about how great it is that they're creating a medal for firefighters. So the Midway movie gets 2.5 stars. Battle Epic misses the target. It's a film called Seberg, starring Kristen Stewart, which gets 2.5 stars as well. Star digs deep, but political thriller barely scratches the surface of real story. Like a Boss gets 1 star. Wow, they're brutal this week. The Peanut Butter Falcon gets 3 stars, starring Shia LaBeouf. An itinerant crab fisherman and a man with Down syndrome lead us on a meandering journey through the bayous of America's rural deep south in this engaging buddy movie. The book column has the general campaign manager for HarperCollins Australia offering her recommendations. Bearing in mind, HarperCollins is owned by the Murdoch family, who own this newspaper. Right, apparently there's a book out on the making of the Gemini Man movie, which seemed pretty forgettable, but technically the shooting in 4K made it somewhat interesting, apparently. Triple M is trying to win back lost sports fans, and the new legends won't pull any punches. That's Wendell Saylor, Jude Bolton, and Gus Worland. Wendell Saylor has really put some weight on there. My word. More tears as a Summer Bay fave is killed off. Right. Sounds like there's a lot of action going on in Soap World. Angela Mollard's offering her opinions of Prince Harry. Without a true sense of home, Harry had to create his own. If Diana were alive, she would have provided sanctuary for Harry, Meghan, and Archie. Oh, God. Really? If you can say that. Duncan Lay's telling the story of Baby Yoda merchandise from The Mandalorian. It's good that he's found another fandom to rip off their tweets and call it journalism. Insider Spotlight's covering the rise and rise of Lizzo, who does seem pretty awesome. Kerry Parnell thinks Meghan Markle's father needs to put a sock in it. I'm sure that's helpful. We have a fashion on Meghan's dress zit. So first we take Brexit and make Megxit, which was kind of funny, I'll give him that. But now any change is also getting a sit. The royal escapee has shrugged off tailored coats and prim frocks quicker than she shrugged off the palace, writes Kerry Parnell, who's just churning out column after column. Apparently the Married at First Sight cast has gone rogue after a wild shoot. The show hasn't even made it to air yet, but Married at First Sight cast have already gone rogue. While all participants have signed contracts preventing them from saying too much about the 9 reality juggernaut to the media, MAFS 2020 contestant Natasha Jane Spencer has given Sunday Confidential a sneak peek at what we can expect when the show goes to air on February 3. Funnily, the Paps have said this year for the first time ever they didn't have to reach out to the contestants, they were reaching out to them. Cast your show completely from Instagram wannabes. They're pretty hungry for media oxygen. Right, so Richard Wilkins has been seen with his partner of 3 years, Virginia Burmester, at the Australian Open. Scotch talk that their relationship is over. Oh, God, can you imagine hanging out with Richard Wilkins and the Stefanovicses? It would be tedious. Apparently Sophie Monk has changed management. I don't know, apparently that means something to someone. James Weir feels the need to tell us that Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston have had a moment at the Screen Actors Guild Awards, which I've got to say they're suspiciously well lit in this moment, and the media appear to have known to be there. It was the caress felt around the globe, Brad Pitt clutching ex-wife Jennifer Aniston's hand as she lightly touched his chest backstage at the Screen Actors Guild Awards. Please take a second to catch your breath from that intense memory. Back page is devoted to Lizzo and her upcoming Grammy appearances. And you can hear, possibly in the background there, fast jets overflying the National Capital to celebrate Australia Day. That's a nice little intervention. Okay, that is the Sunday Telegraph. Nothing particularly atrocious except for, still trying to bury the reality of climate change and make us think about our brave fireys instead. Thank you very much for listening all the way through to the end, and do please, I hate to say it, but like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends if you think they'd like it. Leave them alone if this isn't their bag. And we'll be back next week when I imagine the Telegraph will be descending to its normal sorted level. And on that note, I say good night, or good afternoon, or whenever you're watching this. Goodbye. Au revoir.